The final countdown begins. Cain lay on his back, staring at the sky through the cracked glass of his helmet. His breath came in short gasps, shallow and weak. The oxygen warning in his suit blinked red. He could feel the cold spreading through his body. His ribs were broken. Blood filled his mouth. Every part of him hurt. He knew the truth. He didn't have long. All around him was silence. The battle was over. The machines had stopped firing. The ground was scorched and black. Pieces of ships and armor were scattered everywhere like toys after a storm. Smoke curled into the air, but there were no voices, no footsteps, no one calling his name. He was alone. Cain wasn't a soldier. He had come to this war as a mechanic, a last-minute recruit. He fixed engines, not people. But when the army needed bodies to send to the front, he didn't say no. He didn't want to fight, but he had his reasons. Deep inside, something had pushed him to sign up, and now here he was, bleeding, dying, forgotten. He closed his eyes for a moment. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was how it ended, quiet, cold, alone. But then he heard something, a soft sound, not loud, not human. It was a cry, weak, broken, almost like a whisper. At first, he thought it was his mind playing tricks. Maybe the pain was too much, and he was hearing ghosts, but the sound came again. Cain opened his eyes and slowly turned his head. It hurt too. Move! His neck screamed in pain. But he saw something just barely at the edge of a crater nearby. A shape, small, curled up, moving. It was alive. His heart thumped, not from fear, but from something else. Curiosity, maybe even hope. He didn't know why, but his body tried to move. He dragged himself across the broken ground. Every inch was a fight. His fingers clawed at the dirt. His legs were useless. But he moved 10 feet. Then 20. The shape became clearer. It was a girl. Not human. Her skin was pale silver, with soft lines glowing faint blue. She had cuts on her face. One leg was twisted. Her eyes, large and dark, stared at him as he crawled closer. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Cain stopped when he reached her. He collapsed beside her, breathing hard. He could see now she was young, scared. Her armor was damaged, and her breathing was fast and shallow. She was an alien. One of them. The enemy. Cain stared at her. She stared back. There was no hate in her eyes. Just pain, fear, and maybe confusion. She had not expected him to come closer. She probably thought he'd let her die. But he didn't. Single quotes T. Cain reached into his suit pocket and pulled out the small oxygen vial. Emergency supply. Just enough for one person. Maybe 10 minutes. Not enough to save him. Not really. But maybe. It could help her. He looked at it. Then looked at her. She shook her head weakly. She didn't understand. Or maybe she did. Maybe she was saying no. Don't waste it. Cain smiled. Just a little. His lips were dry and cracked. You need it more, he whispered, though she couldn't understand his words. He pressed the vial into her hand. Slowly she brought it to her face. Her fingers were shaking. She inhaled. The color in her skin changed slightly. Her breathing slowed. She looked at him again, eyes wide. She said something in her language. Cain didn't know what it meant, but her voice was soft, gentle. And then she cried. Quiet tears rolled down her cheeks. She had probably seen death before. She had seen hate. But never kindness. Never like this. Cain felt his strength leaving him. His head dropped. His eyes were heavy. But before everything went dark, he heard her whisper one word in broken English. Why? He didn't answer. He couldn't. But maybe she would understand one day. And maybe, just maybe, Someone would find them before it was too late. Because in that final moment, Cain, a human man who came to a war he didn't belong in, used his last breath to save a stranger. An alien, an enemy, or maybe not an enemy at all. Just someone who needed help. And Cain gave it. Not with power. Not with weapons. But with his last act of choice. And that choice would shake the stars. Who was he before the end? No one would have believed that Cain, the quiet human with grease-stained hands, would end up in the middle of a battlefield on a distant planet. He wasn't trained to fight. He wasn't born to be a hero. He was just a mechanic from Earth, someone who fixed broken engines and old cargo haulers in silence. He had never picked up a weapon before the war. But life has a strange way of choosing people. Cain didn't talk much. He worked long hours in a spaceport scrapyard, keeping to himself. Other workers teased him sometimes, called him a ghost because he was always there but never said much. Still, he had kind eyes and never refused to help anyone. He was the type of man who would carry someone else's load without being asked. But under that quiet nature, something was burning inside him. He never told anyone why he signed up for the war. He just appeared one day in the recruitment line, holding an old backpack and a look that said he had already lost something. The officers didn't ask questions. They needed bodies, not stories. Cain passed the basic tests and was thrown into the mess of soldiers, machines, and metal suits. But even there, he stood out. Not because of skill or strength, but because he didn't show fear. He moved with purpose, spoke only when needed, and always volunteered for the hardest tasks. When the oxygen tanks malfunctioned, Cain fixed them. When drones crashed, he rebuilt them. But when others talked about killing the enemy, Cain stayed silent. He wasn't there for revenge. He wasn't there for glory. He had no medals. He never looked proud in his uniform. Some believed he was running from something. Others thought he was just empty inside. But the truth was far more painful and something Cain never shared. Back on Earth, Cain had a younger sister. She was bright, full of laughter, and the only person who ever made him smile with ease. They had grown up alone, parents long gone, and Cain had raised her like a father. She dreamed of becoming a star pilot. She wanted to touch other worlds. Cain worked extra shifts just to save money for her school. She had the future. He just had the job. But then, one day, she never came home. An explosion on a civilian ship. A mistake in the border zone. Both humans and aliens blamed each other. Dozens of innocent lives lost. Cain's sister was one of them. He was told it was an accident. He was told nothing could be done. The news reports moved on. But Cain didn't. He stopped smiling. He stopped sleeping. And 1 week later, he signed up for the war, but not to fight. He wanted to understand. He wanted to see the people they called enemies with his own eyes. He wanted to know if they were monsters. He wanted to know if this war made sense. Deep down, Cain hoped it would all fall apart when he got close enough. That maybe, in the middle of this madness, he would find something true, and so he went from base to base, fixing ships, patching armor, and watching. He saw soldiers laugh while burning alien homes. He saw prisoners treated worse than machines. And yet, he also saw fear in the eyes of both sides. Fear, pain, sorrow. No one looked like they wanted to be there. One night, while repairing a supply rover near the front line, a sudden attack broke out. Alarms screamed. Soldiers ran. Fire lit up the sky. Cain didn't run. He grabbed a wrench and tried to fix the oxygen valve that powered the base's main shield, but a blast knocked him back. Then everything went black. He woke up alone on a ruined field, lungs crushed, suit leaking. The others were gone, maybe dead, maybe escaped. He didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't move. and the pain was everywhere. That's when he heard her, the alien girl, the soft cry. And everything changed. In those final minutes, Cain's story stopped being about what he had lost and became about what he could still give. He had nothing left, no home, no family, no strength. But he still had one thing. Choice. And Cain chose to save a stranger, because maybe, just maybe, saving her meant saving something of his sister too. Her dream, her hope, her belief that not all aliens were enemies and not all wars were worth fighting. Cain was dying, but his heart was still alive, and what he did with it would not be forgotten. Asterisk. The alien girl who fell from the sky, she had been trained not to feel fear. On her planet, fear was considered weakness. Her name was Riala, and she belonged to the Neolaria species known for their glowing skin, silent movement, and unmatched intelligence. She was not a warrior, she was a seeker, a scout sent across systems to search for answers before the real war began. Riala was not supposed to be on the battlefield. Her mission was quiet: observe, record, report. But something went wrong. The skies turned red. Explosions blocked her signal. Her ship lost power mid-flight. One moment she was flying over a lifeless ridge, the next she was falling, spinning through clouds of ash and flame. Then came the crash, the noise, the pain, and the silence that followed. She woke up broken, her body pinned beneath wreckage. Her leg was shattered. Her wrist unit was crushed. The emergency beacon didn't activate. The soldiers who passed nearby never saw her. Her people believed she was dead and moved on. She could only watch them leave. She didn't even have the strength to call out. For hours she lay there, alone, in pain, breathing in the thick air of a planet that hated both humans and Neolari. She was ready to die. Her body was failing and her mind began to drift. Memories of her mother's face, the sound of home rivers, the glowing trees of her city, they played like fading songs. There was no shame in dying, she thought. Not if it was for her people. Not if it helped prevent what was coming. But then she saw him, a human, crawling, bleeding, dying. She was confused. Humans were loud, violent, proud creatures. But this one was silent. His eyes were soft, not angry. His face held no hatred, only tiredness and something deeper. He should have walked away. She was his enemy. She wore the colors of the Neolari. But instead, he came closer. Riala watched, stunned, as the man dragged himself across the dirt toward her. She tried to speak, but her voice failed. Her translator was broken. Still, he kept coming, not with a weapon, not with rage, but with something she didn't expect: concern. When he placed the oxygen vial in her hand, she didn't understand. At first, she thought it was a trick, a trap, but then she saw his eyes. He wasn't pretending. He truly meant to help her. Even if it killed him. She used the vial. Just a little. Just enough to keep her alive. Then she cried. Not because she was weak, but because something inside her cracked. No one had ever shown her mercy during this war. Not even her own side. Yet here was a dying man offering his final breath to save someone who didn't even speak his language. She whispered, "Why?" Not expecting an answer, not in his tongue, but he heard her. He smiled, gently, like a person who had made peace with life. And then his head dropped. In that moment, something ancient inside Riala awakened. The old songs of her ancestors spoke. Of beings who could rise above war. Beings who would not fight with fists, but with their hearts. She thought it was legend. But this human was real, and he had given her more than air. He had given her purpose. She looked down at him, this fragile, broken man, and made a silent vow. She would survive. She would carry his story. She would deliver her message. The war was not just a battle of species. It was a test of who still had a soul. And now, because of him, she did. *1 oxygen tank. 2 dying lives. The crater was quiet now, like the world had stopped breathing. Dust floated in the cities in the wind. Air, and nothing moved except 2 dying beings, 1 human, 1 alien. Between them lay the last gift Cain had to give, a half-used oxygen vial, barely enough for minutes, but it had already changed something deep in both of them. Riala stared at the human lying beside her. His body was broken, his armor cracked. He didn't move. His chest rose just once every few seconds. She could feel the final moments slipping from him like sand through fingers. She still didn't know his name. He had given her something precious, and yet he hadn't asked for anything in return, not even her identity. She had lived her whole life hearing that humans were selfish, violent, unable to think beyond their own needs. But this one had proved them wrong with a single breath. It shook her, not just her beliefs, but her heart, because now she was left holding life in her hand, his life. The oxygen he gave could have bought him time, but he chose her instead. Her fingers tightened around the vial. It wasn't fair. He had done something beautiful, but now he would disappear like all the others, forgotten in the dust. She tried to lift herself. The pain burned like fire through her leg, but she pulled herself close to him. Her eyes searched his face, still breathing, but barely. Then she did something no Nihilari had done in generations. She opened her neural core. Every Nihilari carried a crystal interface in their minds, a living memory unit that held more than thoughts. It stored feelings, sounds, scents, truths. And now, with her last energy reserve, she used it to transfer something into Cain. She placed her hand on his forehead. The crystal in her palm began to glow. The memory transfer wasn't perfect. It wasn't designed for humans, but it didn't need to be. She wasn't sending him data. She was sending him a truth. A message too dangerous to speak aloud and too important to be lost. She poured it into him not in words but in feelings, images, and voices. What Cain saw inside his fading mind was chaos. A giant dark shape moving in space, consuming stars like food. A secret war, hidden behind the fake one they were already fighting. A third force, ancient and watching, waiting for both human and Nihilari to destroy each other first. That was what Riala had been sent to warn her people about. That was the reason she was hunted and abandoned. And now Cain knew it. Too. She collapsed beside him, her strength gone. But she smiled through her pain. Now he carried her message. Now her death wouldn't be empty. Cain stirred. His fingers twitched. His eyes fluttered open. Just a little. Riala leaned in and whispered a word he didn't understand, but somehow he felt it. Live. And just like that, the crater wasn't just a place of death anymore. It had become a vault of hope where 2 enemies had chosen each other over hate. The oxygen was nearly gone. The pain was still real. But something had shifted. Now, even if no one came in time, it would not be forgotten, because one gave breath, and the other gave truth, and together, they gave the universe a reason to believe. Again, death came, but it missed its mark. The wind howled above the crater like a distant scream, but Cain heard nothing. His eyes had closed. His chest no longer moved. The human who had given everything, his energy, his oxygen, even his final seconds, now looked like just another casualty of war. Still, quiet, gone. Riala sat beside him, her silver skin bruised, and her eyes hollow from pain. She had done what she could. The memory transfer had nearly broken her. Her body shook, her limbs barely responded, but inside her chest, her heart still beat. She wasn't supposed to survive, but he had made her want to. She reached out, touched his face again, cold, too cold. The oxygen was finished. His suit was dark, his body limp. But her people had technology ancient, forbidden, solely used in the most desperate moments. And this was beyond desperate. With trembling fingers, she activated her core again. This time, not to send a memory, but to give energy. Not much, just a pulse. A spark. Enough to restart a dying heart for a few seconds. She had read about the dangers. Cross-species energy transfer could kill her. But it didn't matter. Cain had given her a second chance. Now it was her turn. She pressed her palm against his chest and focused. A faint blue glow passed from her skin into his suit. His body jerked once, then nothing, then again. His fingers twitched. His lips parted. A shallow breath slipped in. He was not alive, but not gone either. For a moment, just when he opened. His eyes, they were glassy and unfocused, but they locked onto her gut, and in that fragile second between life and death, Riala spoke not in her language, but in a single word she had learned from his mind. Remember. His lips moved. No sound came, but she understood what he was trying to say. He remembered everything, the vision, the truth, the thing hiding behind the war, and just as quickly as he had returned, he slipped away again. This time she didn't cry. She nodded slowly because Cain had become something more than human. He had become a carrier of truth, and if someone found him, if someone searched his memories, they would see what he saw. The enemy neither side was prepared for. Riala lay beside him again. Her strength was gone. Her race may never know what she did. His people might never understand what he gave. But out there, beyond the stars, a dark force was rising. And thanks to one dying man and one broken alien girl, the warning had not been lost, not completely. And even if death had come for them both, it had left with empty hands. Asterisk, the message hidden in his heart. Cain's body was found 3 days later. Recon drone picked up a faint distress signal, one that shouldn't have existed. The rescue team arrived expecting only silence and ash. But instead, they found him, broken, burned, barely breathing. And next to him, the remains of a Nayalari scout, arms curled protectively around his chest, as if guarding something precious. They didn't understand. Why would a human and an alien die side by side without signs of violence? Why was there a faint blue crystal embedded in the lining of his armor? Cain was rushed to a medical ship. Doctors tried to revive him, but his body had already passed the point of no return. What puzzled them was the strange neurological activity still glowing in his brain. He shouldn't have had any thoughts left, but something inside him pulsed with rhythm, like a voice whispering behind a locked door. That's when the dreams began. The medical staff started experiencing visions, fragments of a starless sky, a shadow crawling between galaxies, an enemy with no name. Some heard cries in unknown languages. Some saw Cain walking in fire with an alien girl at his side. None of it made sense, yet it all felt real. One medic couldn't sleep for 3 nights. On the 4th, she touched Cain's arm during a routine scan and saw everything. The transfer. Alien girl, the memory buried inside him like a seed. She collapsed, weeping, and told the others what she saw. They ran tests. More medics reported the same thing. Slowly, fear crept in. This wasn't just trauma. It was communication. The Nayalari memory crystal had survived, and Cain had become its vessel. Through him, Riala's warning echoed wordless but powerful. She hadn't needed translation. She had used emotions, images, and soundless truth to make sure her message would live even if she did not. Now, the humans were listening, and what they learned changed everything. There was a third force watching. The war feeding from it. A species so old, even the Nayalari had forgotten their name. They thrived on destruction, waiting for the perfect moment to strike once both sides were too weak to fight back. Cain had died carrying that truth, and now it was spreading. Not in news reports, not in commands, but in dreams, in whispers, in the hearts of those who touched him. The man who never wanted to fight had become the most important voice in the galaxy, and his voice, though silent, would not be ignored. The man who died to save everyone. They called him a hero, but he never heard the word. Across human colonies and Neolari settlements, his name Cain became a symbol not of war, but of peace. Not because he defeated armies, not because he led a charge, but because he gave his last breath for someone no one expected him to save. The image of Cain lying beside the alien girl, her hand over his heart, was shown across star systems. It changed the tone of the war. Soldiers on both sides paused. Some lowered their weapons. Leaders grew silent when asked, if enemies can save each other, then what are we still fighting for? But the greatest change came not from Cain's death, but what he left behind. Inside research labs, human scientists worked to decode the Neolari crystal found fused into Cain's gear. They couldn't crack its data, not in the traditional way, but those who touched it felt things, saw visions, understood things they had no words for. It was as if the truth wasn't meant to be read, it was meant to be felt. That truth, once feared, now became a warning both species believed. And one day, she returned, Riala. Everyone thought she had died beside Cain, but she had survived, hidden, healing, watching. When she appeared at the United Galactic Council, limping but alive, every voice went quiet. She told them everything. About the real enemy, about the plan, about Cain. She stood before generals and governors and said, he was the only one who didn't see me as a threat. He saw me as someone who needed help, and he gave what no weapon could. Mercy. From that moment, peace talks began. Not just talks, change. Humans and Neolari formed a joint task force to prepare for the coming danger, not with pride, but with understanding. They didn't want more death. They wanted to protect what Cain had given them. And as for Riala, she made one final request. She wanted to carry Cain's name, not as a symbol, but as a bond. From that day forward, she called herself Riala Cain, daughter of two worlds, bridge between enemies, and keeper of the message that saved them all. Statues were never built of him. No grand medals pinned, but in every whisper of peace, in every life spared, in every alien who looked at a human and didn't see a monster, Cain lived on. He died with nothing in his hands, but left the galaxy full of hope.